Okay, good evening, everyone. This is Kay Castro here. Bobby O'Reilly is out of town, and I'd like to call this meeting to order at 5:30. Would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Okay, do we do roll call at this time?
Commissioner Krantz?
Here.
Commissioner O'Reilly? Commissioner Jones?
Here.
Commissioner Rich? Here. Commissioner Castro?
Here. This is the time when we have public communication to the commission for items not listed on the agenda. Madam Clerk, do we have any public communication at this time?
Madam Chairperson, we do not have any speakers on non-agenda items.
Thank you. It is now time to do the approval of the minutes. If you've reviewed them, is there a motion to approve the minutes or with any changes or as stated?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Do we have a second?
I second that.
All in favor, or please vote, actually.
Motion carries with 4 yeses and 1 absent.
Thank you. We are now looking at the statewide park development and community revitalization grant, community meeting number 2. We will review the new renderings, and I believe that is the Melton Group or Dawn?
Yes, Melton Design Group. Just to catch everybody up who's not familiar with it, the city applied for a statewide parks grant, Prop 68 funding to complete Phase 2 of Hewitt Park. This park was originally constructed in 2004 with the intent to construct Phase 2 thereafter, but that Phase 2 has sat vacant and bare land for a number of years. So again, staff applied for the funding. We received $4.5 million, or were awarded $4.5 million to complete Phase 2 of this park. And this evening will be community outreach and discussion number 2. So Greg Melton and Aubrey are here to present the final rendition of this park master plan. And soon we will be getting ready to go out to bid so that we can secure a contractor or contractor and subcontractors to complete this final phase of this beautiful park. And with that, I will hand it over to Mr. Melton.
Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. We got our crew ready?
We've got a couple late.
Hello, pleasure. Let's see, so round 2 here, so we met and had the first rendition, I think we saw. It's originally submitted, and now we're going to the next level here. So, do you want to? I have some enlargements that'll make this a lot easier to see on the screen. So, you want to go to the enlargements? So, since our pickleball people are here, we'll talk about pickleball first. What you're looking at on the screen is 8 pickleball courts. There's some big trees that are right in our space there, so we wanted to conserve and save those as much as we can and provide shade at the same time. So you see the 8 pickleball courts, and then there's kind of 3 grouped together and 3 grouped together, and then 2 off to the side. Those 2 are handicap accessible courts, so if they were to have different competitions, they could have one of the competitions could be a handicap competition. Those could also double as their tournament championship courts because they're a little bit bigger, more space. We had room for bleachers and or kiosks and shade at those locations. So as they're doing their tournaments, they'll have some of these custom courts would have more people. You may be able to put chairs around the whole thing if you wanted to, however you guys want to do that. But the trees actually, you know, spread it out a little bit, but it also created some good sitting areas. So instead of having the sitting area right between the two sets of courts, we kind of have those two areas where the green trees are that create a nice space for them to be in between games, setting up tournaments, whatever they're doing. Questions on pickleball? Great. I guess the big question, if you stay there one more second, is the height of the fence around pickleball. We've talked about that, and we've talked about that, and we've all talked about it, and I think we have to talk about it some more. You know, there's 6 foot, 4 foot. If it's 4 foot, it feels less like a jail cell, but then it's easier for people to get in. Are we keeping people out for a reason? You know, there's a lot of things we need to talk about with maintenance, and see if we want a taller fence or something that's more comfortable, I guess, to play.
Are you talking about the fence outside all 8 courts or each court's height of fence?
So around like the groups of 3 and 1s, there's a fence that goes around the whole thing.
Okay.
And then between courts, the groups of 3s, there's a narrow, low fence between the courts also. So I guess the question, between this court and that court, we don't need a tall fence there. Balls get across from court to court on occasion, but doesn't happen all the time.
I
So-
think it might help the discussion if I update the commission as to what the city council just discussed at their budget meeting. There was a consensus from the council to consider private security in our parks and to piggyback off of DWR's security agreement with Platinum Security. They would use the salary savings from the public safety department for a budget adjustment to fund private security company. So that is something to consider when we're discussing the height of this fence and would it be secure, and so just wanted to put that out there.
I would like to hear from Wade, because he's the guy on the ground going to be dealing with this thing every day. You have any input, feedback?
Currently, at the basketball courts at Hewitt Park, there are no fence around, and we have a lot of graffiti on that pavement or concrete. A 4-foot fence doesn't provide much of a barrier for people that wanted to get in there and be destructive. A 6-foot would provide a little bit more barrier. I would prefer a 6-foot fence.
Thank you.
But will we be locking those courts in the evening hours? Because that's something to consider as well. If we aren't going to be locking them, then the 6-foot versus the 4-foot doesn't matter. And I'm sorry to trump what you just said, but I just want us to review all considerations.
If we got the central control system that we're asking for, we could have automatic locks on those, like the restrooms and probably other portions of this facility.
Absolutely.
That might be a conversation with Greg after or at a different time.
Yeah. And so the fence height isn't set in stone yet. We still have more discussion there, but it's for consideration. And so that's something we will continue to discuss amongst staff going forward.
And we are looking at it being a black vinyl fence. So it's not just a chain link gray galvanized fence, but it'd have the vinyl coating on it. Makes it a little bit more invisible, but also a little more appealing when you do see it. So, all right. And then
Wait, one more question. Part of the fun of pickleball is watching the matches. So I'm just wondering why there has to be a fence in between the courts. Couldn't we have benches or stuff?
what would you guys like?
The thing is, we aren't hanging out next to the courts. Usually when you're rotating in and rotating out, waiting for your time to get on the court, you're usually off to the side in the shade, not in the sun. I know at Bedrock, we're always off in the shade, we're off in the shade. The fences help prevent the balls from going and interrupting play. There are courts which don't have fences. I've refereed at courts where they don't have fences, and there's constant ball on, and it interrupts play. So that's the downside of the fences. I like sometimes not having a fence because it gives you more room, like on the in between the courts, because it gives you more room, especially in lively single play, where you don't have a fence to run into, you'll have another court to run into. So the fence in between the courts, that's the downside. But the other side is the balls constantly interrupting. Your game is interrupting somebody else's game.
Okay, I understand this plan now. I thought they were individual courts. I know exactly what this is, and whatever height you want it is what we should do. I get it now.
And I see that he has the trees in the middle, which look like, oh my gosh, if we could have more shade, the more shade, the better. Not necessarily on the court, but a place close to the court, so when your court's ready to rotate onto, you have a place to get out of the sun.
So if you're playing on a middle court of those three in a tournament, and I want to watch you, where do I stand or sit?
I'm usually on the outside of the court.
Got it.
Like at Chico, the
middle area.
people line
Okay.
up their chairs and
Got it.
stuff, and sometimes there'll be like I see the benches in between the
Tree
court
there.
on the one side away from the Dallas
Okay.
Sport one. And a lot of times when you're like photographing and stuff, like I'll go in there when I'm like, and just be very quiet and photograph. So it's nice to have a little bit of sitting space in between courts. But mainly, it's go to your court, do your job, play your game.
Okay, thank
So
you.
on this plan, below each of the trees or right above each of the trees is bleachers and seating area. So, and then on the, between the pickleball courts and what is depicted as the climbing boulders is also seating area. So that's where spectators can sit.
Thank you.
And I'm not showing all the trees. There are no new trees shown on this plan. Otherwise, you wouldn't see it because I think we have over 100 trees we're planting. So we choose not to show them. We're just showing what's existing at this point. All right. And then we were looking at, these get into more detail. We're looking at the color of the court. So we wanted to do a blue, gray, and a blue color. Didn't know if you guys were, it's kind of a theme through the park. So the grays, the blues, the blacks all work good together with the fencing. And then it's happening in other parts of the court too. So, all right, very good. We'll be talk about 6 foot, 4 foot in the future, and we'll discuss how the locks can help with that maintenance and et cetera. Well, I'm glad to hear that we're going to have security because that's going to hopefully reduce a ton of issues. And we all as a mainstay to all parks and rec is it's pretty common when you get a park like this and the amount of people that are going to be at this park, we're going to really take back the park, basically. So it'll be exciting to watch. All right, so zooming to the bottom of the page, you see some slides, right, and a little red building there. So what you're looking at is, what is that, Park Street on top there, and the train. There'll be a little group picnic area next to the train and an interpretive panel, so you'll be able to sit there and look at the train amongst the grass. We're choosing not to do anything in that back corner behind the train where it's kind of a fenced little triangle back there. So we'll probably remove the turf and just do some vegetation, grasses, something that's non-mowable, non-irrigated materials, and then we'll just have grass in front. As you see the walkway up to the red square there, the red square is a little hut on a platform that kind of hangs out over that edge. So we've kind of created an overlook, and we're doing that for that reason, but also because we wanted to get the slide at the right angle to come down the hill. Slides are at 30 degrees, so that's pretty steep. But we're at about we're at about 20-degree slope there. So it allows us to have this platform. I show 2 slides coming off of that, and they go down into fall material. And then you see the winding path off to your left. That's a accessible walk path back to the top. So instead of having a straight set of stairs going right down the thing, doesn't seem fun when you look up and, oh my God. So this is just a meandering path that'll be a maximum slope of accessibility of 1 in 12. So it'd be comfortable to walk up. Every 50 feet, there'll be a level area with railing and throughout. So it'll be fun. And then the little lines are going to be a little stair, wooden stair access. So like railroad tie or landscape tie stair access up the side. They'll be well installed, so they're not going to be coming apart. But we know kids take shortcuts, so we either going to do that or we're going to have a worn path through there that'll be eroding dirt onto the sidewalk. So you want to show the next slide, which I think has the section of this?
Oh, you know what? I mean,
Take a second here. The yellow slide's 40 feet long, so this room's probably about 30. So you can see how long the slide is. And there's about a 10-foot run out at the end because you go pretty fast at that. You guys may have the section plan in your pamphlet, I think. Is that in there? No, it's not. Sorry. There it is. Look on the screen.
Fun.
So you have a little overlook off of Park there, the path coming around, and then there's a third little slide that's only 6 feet tall. So if you only wanted to walk up partway and come down the slide, you can do that. You know, if you're a little scared to go down the big slide, this will be a wide slide, so you'll have like 3 kids going down at once, right? So it'll be kind of a fun little racer slide. And then you can see with the little cantilever in the deck, there's a little hut up there. Well, that's starting you down the tube slide, which is a spiral tube slide coming down. So we wanted to get up a little higher in this case, so it makes it a little bit more exciting. So it's kind of like a water slide scenario, but not. The landing is your typical wood chip fall material. So that's what you'll be landing out on. And on all these slides, there's plenty of room. If you are needing to take a moment to wait for a wheelchair or something, you'll be able to slide off to the side, transition basically. And if other kids are coming, you don't want to be sitting there in that spot when they just come down 40 feet of slide. So there'll be a transition spot. You slide off and the other kids can just continue on down their way. You had a question.
No, I just I'm really enjoying the presentation.
Great.
This looks fun.
Let's go back to that last slide then. So that's, this is just one part of the play, right? So we wanted to keep the Park Street side up top, just really simple, right? We didn't want to put a lot of things up there. One reason there's not a lot of room to do anything up there. We originally, in the last plan, I think had a little play structure there, but it just really doesn't work well and fit well. So that's just a little, an overlook. And I think just that overlook alone, standing on there and you're staring right at Table Mountain. We'll bring a picture of that next time to see what you're actually looking at. Note that. So at the bottom, you see the big oak tree at the bottom of the yellow slide. That slide will be centered on that tree. It's still ways away, but that's a nice, beautiful, big oak tree. And the circles there are picnic tables. It doesn't show the true outline of the tree. It's about 15 feet bigger. So those tables will all have shade. So as your mom and dad sitting there watching your kid do laps, you're going to be sitting there enjoying yourself under a tree. And similarly with the other side, there'll be trees planted over on the blue slide. So when you're coming down, there will be shade there. All right, let's head into the playground. The play and spray ground, kind of my favorite part of this park. So let's start with the spray zone. So I think last time we presented that we're doing a train and mining theme. So the spray zone is completely fenced in. So if there is an event that we can shut it down, but everybody else, there's in the middle there, if you can use your cursor, there's a fence gate between the blue down, right there. There's a big 2 4-foot fences, gates there that'll open up, and they'll be open during play. And then if something happens to the spray ground, it'll close that, and then the spray ground will be closed out, and everybody can go to the playground. But during normal play, assuming everything is clean, we have a railroad theme in the concrete that you'll see railroad tracks literally made out of concrete in the concrete, so it'll be flat and accessible. And then there's, in the middle, there's a tower, blue tower. So this is Hewitt Station. So it'll say, you know, it'll be 18 feet tall and say Hewitt Station. We have a section we'll show you in a second. And then it goes into the tracks disappear. Well, they're going to go into what is the mine. What is it, Banner Mine? Is that right? I think so, yeah. So it'll look like a tunnel.
Wilcox Placer Mine.
Placer, yeah, Wilcox Placer. I made a mistake there, so.
It's okay.
So it'll look like a tunnel there, and then as that area is elevated where those three circles are, that's 4 feet in the air. So you're sitting up there and there's fencing railing, but you're looking over the spray ground. There's all picnic tables, shade trees, and then that 4 foot area connects to the play structure to the bottom in the brown. So you're already 4 feet in the air. A net, kids could run under you. You're coming into the play structure at 4 feet. There'll be an accessible path, so a wheelchair can wheel right into that and slide out of that. And then it goes from kind of the big tower, which is a mine shaft kind of looking thing. So it's wooden, tall. You guys see Zorro before when they at the end, when he blows up all that's going to look wooden like that. And, but it wouldn't be wood. It would be another material. And then it transfers from a 5 and 12 play area over to the right where the blue slide is, which is a 2 to 5 play area. And little things and spinners on the ground. And the blue signifies a port in place fall material, so wheelchairs can get to most of the elements. And then the brown is the fall material itself. So the playground is, we didn't want to use it everywhere in the playground because it hurts your budget. So we have part fall, part rubber, and part wood chip. You want to show that section? She was ready for me. Look at that. So I have a section of the playground.
Greg, that might.
I don't have a section of the playground. Aubrey will show it to us on a board, though. Do we have it on the board?
We do.
We're technically challenged today. So just, yeah. So you can see this, you have your pointer ready? Great. So the section starts at the train. You can see that on one side of the section. The bathroom's behind you there. The landscape will be mounted up, and there's little seat walls around that area. So ton of spectator space. So wherever your kid's playing, there'll be somewhere to sit.
Great.
And then the trains go, and those wooden arches are kind of like a little mine that you're running through, a little trellis, and water comes out of that. Those I don't know, they're about 8 foot tall, so they look like little troughs. And so water will be pouring out of that in different ways. Sometimes it'll sprinkle out of one. The other one, it'll just clump on you. So just different water types. One's a mister. So you'll be running down the tracks, getting water dropped on you. Go over to the spray zone, get a big bucket of water dropped on you. And then throughout the whole spray zone, there'll be little sprays for kids and little things to sit on. And we're not sure what they are yet, but you know, maybe one's a big rock, a big gold nugget, right, out of concrete. And then water will be shooting out, and so the kids can sit on the nugget or do whatever. And then it transitions. You can see it transitioning into the mine. The railroad runs right into a mine there. And so that looks like a mine with the big concrete, but it'll look like wood element. And then the train tracks will just disappear with paint. So we'll paint a mural on it that'll make it look like disappear. And that's where we're talking about a NOFA on some of these things for our commission to come on board and paint this as part of the project. And then as you can see, you're up in the air 4 feet. People are elevated looking over, which is kind of a neat feeling when you're higher and looking down. And then you're onto the play structure. So that's kind of the end of that section. But kind of gives you an idea how you transition through there.
Have we talked about what dates and times the water will be flowing? And is it consistent or depending on temperature?
Everything is activated when you're there. So at some point here in the spring, you'll start. So March, whenever you want to start the spray ground, when it gets warm enough, as soon as it hits, 70 degrees or some.
It'll be on a timer.
Right.
So, and it'll be seasonally activated.
And those seasons are?
We
haven't
haven't
talked
fully
about it?
determined
Okay,
that
great.
yet.
Typically what
Thank
happens
you.
is March comes, it gets warm enough, they then turn, make sure the pumps are all working, clearing it up, and then there's an activator. So the big Hewitt station will have an activator. The train itself has water shooting off the top of the train that looks like mist, so it looks like smoke. That'll have an activator. The little kid area will have an activator.
Okay.
So there's 3 activators that trigger, because you don't want all the water just doing its thing, right? It doesn't just continue to run. It just sits there, oh, I want to play. You go bam, and you go and you run through it. It lasts for 3 minutes, and then yet someone else, your turn to hit it, and then you run and hit it. And so those activators are very great on water circulation, and everything's circulated, everything's cleaned, it's in a tank under the ground. The bathroom is storing this whole pump house. It'll all be in a new building next to the restroom that'll look like an old shed. So we have our gable roof, nice restroom, and then the next one will look like shed out back, right? And again, the water is going into about a 5,000 gallon tank underground, which is required. Our environmental health at the county will inspect all this and approve it. There'll never be more than a few inches of water piling up on the ground. So you're walking on concrete most of the time, wet concrete. But yeah, a lot of fun. And we're looking at it right now because there is also the ability to do lighting that would come out of the ground with the different fountains. So that's a budget line item that if it fits in the budget, it would be really neat to be able to keep the park open in the evening as it gets, starts to get dark and you see these lights shooting up out of the fountains and things like that, so.
Commissioner Rich?
Yeah, 100% recycled, and it takes about a half a day to recycle the system and filter through all the water. So when things shut down, the water circulates, cleans itself, and is ready to go the next day. If there is, what do you call them, a brown event? A code brown, as they call it. And there's the solid code brown, and then there's the code yellow, right? Or most of the time, it's a diaper situation. So we'll have a diaper station on site there. You can be able to buy your diaper, a swim diaper, excuse me, a swim diaper. So splash pads have been around long enough now that I think the different districts have learned and cities have learned how to operate them, and that these things happen. Anderson just opened theirs last year. They just had a great year of it. I was up there the other day, and there was 250 kids on a spray ground this size, and they had buses, and they were just coming from all over. So it was super neat to see that. And yeah, the code brown occurs, and you gotta shut it down. But the great part is we're gonna have a playground right next to it. So what happens just in the social world is if your kid happens to be a problem running around in his diaper, every mom is looking, because the next thing that happens, the park's gonna close. If that diaper sags and hits the ground, the park has to close.
For how long?
Takes a day to recycle. You can do a fast recycle in 4 to 6 hours, but by that point, right?
Yeah.
So there you go. So parents are very clear that, hey, your kid's diaper's having a problem, right? Or most of the time we'll have a kid zone, so there'll be the little sprinkler zones, right? So it's good to make sure the toddlers stay in those areas. And we actually slope the concrete differently in that area. So if the toddlers are in that area and something happens, we know that that's this pipe. And if we can get to that quick enough, they can avoid situations. So,
And there will be signage at each entrance notifying parents of this and families.
and the good thing that happens is if this does happen, we have a playground and everything else right next door that you can continue with your day. And with the gates open, everybody's gonna be going back and forth. The playground will get a little wet, but it's all non-slip and everything else, so.
And if we get there fast enough, who's the we?
Well, it's a great question, Wade.
It would get reported to the Parks Department. There
Yeah.
would be a number on the sign.
So it'll take
And it would
it'll
be
take a
addressed.
while.
Great.
Typically it's like it'll find out at some point your mechanism will tell you. So the pump system will notify you that there's a contamination, and
Thank you.
we'll go from there.
Thank you, Wade.
So at the bottom, the red rectangle there is our large group picnic area. So if you want to have a big group picnic, there's that on the end of the playground with barbecues on both sides, so you can split it in half. You know, there'll be about 6 tables on each side, so 6 times 8, 50 people on each side. And if you want to split it, great. If someone wants to reserve the whole thing, great. Options are all over, and like I said, there'll be other picnic tables throughout the whole play area, so there's plenty of places to sit and eat, and, you know, more trees will be planted, we'll have more shade. But I really liked how they blend together, and it kind of goes from the train theme into the mining theme, and it's not like a separate pod over here and then a playground separate over here. They're kind of joined in definition there. Any questions on the play and spray? All right.
I have a question about, just back to pickleball, but I have a place to speak a little bit. Just electric, do you get the electric in there, electric outlet? For tournaments and PA system and our computers?
They're not shown on the plan right now, but they're on there.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. Lighting and electricity will also be on the pickleball courts as a part of the grant. So, all right, let's zoom back up to the dog park or something. There you go. So if you want to point to the old trash enclosure, which is right there. So right now you turn into that road and there's a trash enclosure and people use it, right? And it's blocks the road from going any further, and there's just wasted space really between the apartments at the park at that point. So what we're looking at is moving that trash enclosure closer to the restroom and opening up about 4 to 5 more spaces and creating a little larger parking lot there, knowing that it's going to get very busy over there. So that's an alternate we didn't think about when we first designed the park, but it makes a lot of sense now to do that. So you'd come in and just relocate that and build a new one at the end, and that way the trash enclosure also is kind of sent more, doesn't move very far, but it's not standing out there in the middle of your area. And then we have the large dog and the small dog park, and they're proportionately sized. Smaller dog parks don't really need a big space. So you see there's a central path down the middle and then gates and entrances to the dog parks with concrete. There'll be drinking fountains and trash enclosures there, or trash cans there, and your doggy baggy pickup at that location. And then the red squares are shade structures. They hold a couple tables. And we have trees on each end, and there'll be other trees planted in that brown decomposed granite material there. So as the dogs come off they come out the gate and are ready to go, we're not running them right onto the lawn. That typically is a big wear location, so we're providing some decomposed granite to where they can disperse, and then that one section out the gate isn't always just worn out. So they'll go across that onto the turf, and there are a lot of ways to maintain dog parks. A lot of people rotate for a while. They'll let all the dogs be on one side and let the turf regenerate for a week, and then they'll flip them over and then let them both go for a while. So there's a lot of different ways of trying to keep your turf up in dog parks. A lot of times the turf doesn't last, but that's something we can play with if we want to not put any turf in there and make it all decomposed granite. I think Chico's is all decomposed granite now. Yeah, I like the size of the big dog park, and there'll be fencing around all that. And that would be a 4-foot metal fence around all those. And on top of the fence, we'll have just a little area. Every so often, there'll be a top put on the fence where you can lean your elbows on it without being on top of chain link. So it'll kind of make it more comfortable and more social to communicate as you're walking on the loop path there around the field. Anything on the dog park? Good. You in every community. To the right, we do have, right by that blue swimming pool you see there, it says elderberry. We do have several elderberry in this condition, and at this point, we'll be locating those, and then a 20-foot setback is what's needed from the center of the, from the outside of the elderberry. So we're pretty close right now. I may have to bump that sidewalk in about 4 or 5 more feet. But that elderberry is there, and there's nothing you can really do with it. It costs a lot to move them. So our goal is just to avoid them. So that small dog park may get a little bit narrower, but we'll be, although they've all been located there, so we just need to measure accurately off of the stem itself. So no big environmental issues, just have to do avoidance on that. All right, let's just slide down and show the whole field. So the playing field now is level. Never thought I'd say it that way, but it's the big tree at the bottom is a 27-inch oak, I think, so I didn't want to take it out. The one on the left is very large. There's 2 or 3 trees. 3 trees you see in the middle of the turf area with the X's. Those are like 8-inch, 9-inch, and 6-inch trees that are, to me, dispensable at this time. We're planting over 100 trees in the park. So this allows us to get a level field. It's a small soccer field at 110 by 175, 185 long. So it's not a full-size soccer field, but it's perfect for youth to play. You can, if we want, we can put a backstop in one of the corners for a t-ball or something like that, you know, and it's just a multi-use turf field. And it's on the, that and around the climbing boulder and the dog park at this point are the 3 areas where we're adding turf to the park, or we're keeping turf where it already is, I guess, at this point. But you can see when you look at the whole plan that we're really removing a lot of grass or potentially irrigated areas. All the other areas will be irrigated by drip irrigation point source at the plant itself, so. At the bottom where that tree is, and you see little Fs there, those are the fitness areas. So we have a few of those throughout the site as you're walking around. I think we have 4 different fitness stations where you'll be doing some type of workout. We keep it pretty simple now. There's, you know, we don't need a bike to spin. Anytime you do something like that, you're creating a mechanism that's gonna break on these things. So we do more of the bars, sit-up bars, pull-up bars, stretch bars, everything that's kinetic. So you use your own weight to do all the exercise, not anything else there. If you want to slide over to the boulder, the little brown peanut there to the left. There you go. That's our climbing boulder. It's 11 feet tall, 10 feet tall. So it's there. Ceiling height here, I imagine, is pretty close to that, 11 feet. And this is about 15 feet long. So it's got everything from very hard climbing holds and routes to very simple climbing holds and routes. It's got fall material around it and some grass. And you don't see it, but in the budget, we started to put in boulders around it, small sitting boulders. So you'd be able to sit on something and watch your friends, and there'll be trees around that area also. But that is a real teen event most of the time. So the goal is to have the teens interact here with the kids at the spray zone or the pickleball groups, and not just be off on their own somewhere. We moved the basketball courts to the other side, so they have more visibility, but we wanted to spread the teenagers out and around, so. This is, I don't believe this was on the grant plan, so as we do look at budgets, this boulder may be something that is, you know, part of the alternative bid to see if it'll fit in the budget. So, have you guys ever seen one of those freestanding? It's pretty neat. See those kids climb upside down and get to the top, so. All right, let's go.
What is art?
Art, my uncle Art, no. So we have art throughout the park, and that's just one of the areas that we're targeting a location for future art, working with the Art Commission.
Okay, thank you.
With the restroom there, you see the add-on pump house, the spray pump house. So it just goes onto the back. There is a manhole right there that'll also be inside that room now, because we don't want to move it, but I think we'll be okay. It'll be very accessible for maintenance or whatever we need to do there. And then if we slide up, we got the horseshoe pits, that'll stay the same. A lot of this area stays, and then where the bocce court is, we're converting that to 2 basketball courts and a futsal court, and this is fully fenced. The ends are 8 to 10 foot high fencing on both of the short ends where you see a little futsal goal, and then on the other sides, it's much shorter at 4 feet. The game of futsal is you're controlling the ball with your feet and you're using the fence on the sides, kind of like hockey or indoor soccer. But we didn't want this to be a cage, so I think a 4-foot fence around it keeps it very open and airy. Balls go out all the time, whether it's 4 foot or 6 foot. So it's just based on how your guys learn how to play. You see one additional basketball half court, and we're doing that in case there is a futsal game going on and you still want to go shoot around. You'll have a court there to play a 3-on-3 or 2-on-2 or just shoot around and practice. So I think it'll get a lot of use, just like the basketball court on the other side, except this time now they're very visible. They're right by the road, they're right by the parking lot, a lot more visibility into the park. The trail that goes around, the path that goes around the court is modified a little bit, so you'll be able to walk the loop around it. We're providing a area around the train and a sitting area, interpretive panels at the train. We're putting new black wrought iron fencing onto the train, so it's very attractive. And then on that, we'll have some art, and that's another part of the NOFA that'll go out, would be art for the train, both trains. So it'll be a little bit more exciting. And then up at the front, there's a new gateway, so there'll be similar to Martin Luther King's archway. We're going to try to keep a theme going here. So we'll have a gateway coming into the park there, and just a little small plaza to wait for people. So you're not waiting at the edge of the parking lot where cars are coming in. You'd be waiting there. And there you go. That's our revised design.
Which was my next question. I see the ADA parking at one end. That's where general parking is? And what's the capacity?
Where are you pointing?
Down by the train zone, steel fencing, overlook gateway, it says ADA parking at the very bottom.
Oh,
Where is
on
the rest,
Park.
where is the rest of the parking and what's the capacity, or is it street parking?
No, it's this area here. It's what's existing at the park.
Got it. Okay.
There's substantial parking
Phase
in
one
this
had
park.
all the parking put in and the access, all the ADA parking spaces. We didn't have one on top, so that's where we're looking at wanting to put a parallel ADA parking spot on top.
Yes, there are a few businesses around there that would probably appreciate directing parking there to the lot.
Yeah, so on top, we don't have a parking lot. We have one, it's a parallel parking handicap space. If you show the bottom of the plan, kind of blow up there, just to the right of the main entry, there's a little hatch. So right there, street parking there now. So everything's parallel street parking. All we will be doing is altering a little bit of the sidewalk and striping it to where a car can park parallel and get out of their car per an adaptive wheelchair onto the sidewalk. So it's not about providing parking there's no parking lot up there at all. And the businesses would have to have their own handicap parking, ADA parking.
But in general, you don't expect people to park along Baldwin there in front of those businesses? Or you can't control it?
They may.
Yeah, you can't, I don't think we have control over that at this point.
It's street parking, so.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of access points to this park, which also reminds me about the lot over by the basketball courts now. There's a lot up top and that road that comes down. Well, I believe that lot, so there's that road that goes up right above that little girl there. And there's a empty lot there that I believe has been purchased, and they're going to turn it into a parking lot for businesses up there. We're not going to promote any vehicle use down that road that currently is there now, so.
That is not going to be accessible for
Right.
anything. There's going to be a wall
Exactly.
that goes around
Right.
that, and it is a private parking lot, so it's
Yeah.
not going to be, that road is pretty much off the plate. at
That
this point.
access will be abandoned.
So there's, that area there will be no vehicle access, no real trail access that way, so in all cases, it shouldn't really be a route for anybody at this point.
Are there any further questions from the dais?
I have one. In all of this construction scheme, is there any provisions for anti-graffiti coatings on any of the surfaces?
Yeah, so, most of the play structures are all relatively, cleanable with what they do on their, steel, plastic, et cetera, et cetera. Any walls we build will have graffiti coating on it, so if we're building a seat wall or something, it'll have graffiti, the fencing, no. Vinyl coated fencing is pretty easy to clean, nothing's easy to clean graffiti off of, but it's easier. So, yeah, I think in the industry, everything now has that tag on it, that we try to keep it as graffiti-free as possible, so.
Thank you, because that's
or
a large
easy to
concern
clean-
for.
Easier to clean graffiti, it's just that aspect of it. I guess just to wrap up, financially wise, we're a little over budget with this plan at this point, so you never know where you're gonna land until you get what you want on paper. And so with this plan, we're about $500,000 over budget. So to get to that point, we will either, we'll look at the amount of concrete we're pouring, we'll look at maybe switching concrete areas out to just be planting areas if we don't need that circulation. The playground may shrink 5 feet around the outside, and the spray ground may shrink, or we may lose one element in it. But we'll have to reduce it someplace in everything you've seen there, because there's a lot going on. So I think taking a swath at that and losing $500,000 in there, I think it's all pretty easy to do, so.
And that was also with a 20% contingency, correct, for anticipated inflation?
Yes, that was with a 20% contingency. So what we have, $4.5 million. Yeah, so with the contingency, I'm over that by another 500,000 right now. So we'll, that's our job, is to bring that in. If I have to take a pickleball court out, I'll do it. But they, oh, so you're not even paying attention back there, are they? You're just thinking about pickleball.
We heard that.
So yeah, it'll be a line item, and somewhere down the line, we'll have alternates in the bid. And those will be things we maybe want. And if you do, maybe we can find more money if we want to keep something, but it'll be during the bid process, we'll have an alternate. And if there's enough outcry to throw more money at it, then somehow we'll ask and get more money or do something different, so.
I don't see any other commissioner questions. Madam Clerk, are there any questions from the public?
Madam Chairperson, we have one speaker, Beth Billow.
Of course I have to speak. Shut me up sometimes. Okay, where's the timer anyways? Thank you, Park Commission and City of Oroville. This is a dream come true. Greg and Aubrey have been fantastic. The support, as you know, we could fill up the courts tomorrow with all 8 courts filled. We're filling up 4 with people waiting. In the meantime, because we are growing, we're adding like 10 more people every month. It seems we have a lot of players. So we are actually creating an advisory group among us, so we can all kind of agree and give guidelines for fair play, good behavior, also to help advise our group and the community for running tournaments and fundraising, organizing and special events such as clinics. Already have a top national player to bring in. Also, as an advisory committee, it is an informal committee, but we still want to communicate with those that we need to, such as the City of Oroville, maintenance, and things like that.
And so I want you to be aware there'll probably be about 6 of us. And some of us will be from the newer group, newer players, backgrounds in recreation. And then we have players from the other group, and players who've been part of the newer group and the older group. So I wanted to let you know that we're looking forward to working with the city of Oroville. We are so blessed to have the pickleball courts being built. You have no idea how much it means to us and for this community, because it's not going away. And I think that's about it. And
Thank you.
these guys are great, and thank you so much.
Thank you for speaking.
Oh, and in that,
Got more time. Go ahead.
as far as what I've just seen, what has happened with the Bedrock courts, with the more people playing there and being present, that there seems to be a lot less vagrants, a lot less homeless people, a lot less calling the cops for interruption of people on drugs in the bathroom, just by our pure presence alone. And with this new park, not only for the pickleball players, just for the community, having a really great new place to go and bring their kids, their presence is really going to reduce the traffic and troublemakers of even just during daytime type stuff, so.
Thank you very
Okay,
much.
thank you.
Madam Chairperson, that's the only speaker.
Thank you. Do we have any action that we need to take tonight?
This was just a community meeting to satisfy the needs of the grant.
Thank you very much. It seems to go from 3 to 5. Did we miss 4 or?
The agenda numbered itself and I didn't catch it. I apologize.
Okay, thank you. So we're moving on to number 4, 5, vandalism expenditures for January through May relating to city parks.
Yes, in page 7 of your packet, Mr. Atterbury provided the vandalism numbers for our parks. And so I'll let him take the lead in expanding on that.
Yeah, I'm hoping this is what you're asking for. It's kind of a breakdown of the various parks and how our timesheets are broke down, so we can track time at the various parks. I have to say, about 3 minutes before this meeting started, I looked this over one more time and I realized I did not put Hammond Park in here. So Hammond Park is not in these numbers, but looking at Hewitt Park and Rotary Park and Bedrock, kind of, if you wanted to do an average, you know, you could add the 273 hours, you could add by about 50 more hours for Hammond Park, and about 35, you know, anywhere from $100 to $400 worth more budget cost to that. So I do apologize about not having that number correct. That was just I didn't catch it when I was putting these together. So these, but the rest of these numbers are correct. So Parks General, you see 84.5 hours. It does catch our green areas such as Bridge Street or La Palma or the Park and Ride or the City Hall landscaping. So when we get graffiti or broken vegetation due to vandalism or something, or broken sprinklers due to vandalism, that's where that catches all the small postage stamp areas that we take care of as well. So the numbers there are a little bit higher, but a lot of those are unfortunately irrigation cost associated with broken sprinklers, things like that. So I'm open to any questions if you have any.
Well, given that that comes out to $8.60 for materials only, are the employees' salaries mostly within your Parks Department, or any in Measure U for safety, or?
I'm not sure, $8.
2349.45 divided by 273.
No, the 23 is just the budget. If
So it's
you-
2349.45
That's
for materials
materials.
only.
Yes.
So the 273 hours,
273 hours, if you did a
Equate to-
$70 average, is
Okay,
about a
thank you.
$19,110 expense.
thank you. That's what I was trying to get to. Okay,
And that's the weighted cost.
thank you. Are there any questions from the commissioners?
Yes, once again, Wade, have you tried any of these anti-graffiti coatings, like for signages or anything else?
We have. The
Okay.
smoother the surface, the easier it is for the graffiti to come off. Sometimes though, like on signs especially, we have to use something so strong, we end up taking the sign color off as well. The more porous the surface, it doesn't matter what we try to apply. And the part of the problem is it will dissipate over time, sunlight and wind and just exposure. It'll just kind of dissipate over, sometimes within 3 months. So, we typically try to paint over graffiti where we can, match the paint and paint. But say like St. Park, for example, we get graffiti on the concrete. We don't want to have a bunch of paint on the ground over there in a historic
Right.
setting, so we have to sandblast. That takes a lot of time on the concrete and the brick over there. That's very time consuming. We've increased the lighting, we've increased the things we can do. It comes and goes in spurts. We'll have a rash of it over a weekend, and, so next thing we know, we got 12 hours of cleanup, sandblasting, the brick and the concrete over there. And then we won't have it for 2 months, and then all of a sudden we'll get another rash of it. So it's real sporadic. The doodling on the tables, the picnic tables in the parks, the bathroom walls, things like that, that's a constant. But that's real cheap. When we clean the restrooms, we take a paintbrush with us and we have one white, for interior of the restrooms, so we just paint over it. It's quicker for us to paint over it and move on rather than try to clean it with expensive graffiti removers and things like that. And kind of the same thing with the park benches. We have just so much of it that it's easier to put a paintbrush or a roller in a plastic bag, to keep it wet all day and just paint as we go.
All right, thanks for the information.
Madam Clerk, do we have any comments from the public?
Madam Chairperson, we do not have any speakers on this item.
Thank you. Moving on to discussion of priority 1, safety of parks.
So there has been a lot of discussion, especially out of the goals setting meeting for the Park Commission. Several of those items were the levy, the ownership of the levy, lighting, cameras, and fencing within the parks. With the levy, we discussed, and I said that I would bring a map, but actually we have a tool available on our city website, and I'll pull that up for you now. Jackie, can I have you turn it to... So on the city's website, this is the home page. You scroll down and there's 6 boxes. Under GIS data and mapping, you click into this page and view web maps, and that will take you to zoning and general planning map. This is a great tool. I use this daily, and it shows you, once it loads, parcels, and it'll show you all the parcel segmentations along the Feather River. Come on. And so this is where I was explaining that the parcel segmentation along the Feather River gets very sticky. And some of you saw this before you came in this evening. This is a 2010 study or an investigation that was done for the levy ownership of all those parcels along that trail. Every deed for every parcel along the river was investigated as to whether the state owns it, whether the county owns it, the city owns it, or if it's privately owned. And that is what makes our grant applications very sticky for the state when we apply for funding for this area, is because that ownership of the trail and the levee is very segmented. And so they like to see clean lines and ownership, and it just isn't the case for this location. And I apologize, my computer is being very slow.
How is that binder reflected in that parcel map? Or are we just not close enough yet?
It's not close enough yet, and so I
Okay.
apologize. I'm having issues
Thank you.
with my internet. It's never been this bad. Well, at some time today, it'll show you all the parcels. And it really defines each residential parcel, each commercial, everything is completely defined as it is. It's not down to the foot as far as if you were to survey the parcel, but it gives you the idea. Also, you can change it to satellite view and it'll show you houses and trees and a full satellite view with the parcel grid over it. And so this is where it'll be easier for you to identify, like Rotary Park here shows itself as a parcel. The roads are defined, the levee is defined, and the trails in all the parks. And so that'll just be an easier tool going forward for curiosity or for purposeful needs. So I wanted to show that to you.
Does it show
all.
residential, city, state, federal jurisdictions?
No, this does not show ownership. The ownership of the private properties is still private. We can't publicize that.
Like city, state, federal jurisdictions?
Well, if it's
Who
blue
owns
and
the
it's
levy?
if it's blue and it's public quasi, that means it's either city, state, or county. So
Yeah, therein lies the problem.
and if it's R1, it'll show you zoning. If it's R1 or RL, then that means it's residential and it's privately owned. So there's easier ways to identify the ownership of the property that way by zoning. Also regarding the levy, there was a request for preventing access to the west side of the levee at the First Street access right behind Rotary Park. Mr. Atterbury and I walked the levee and we decided that putting in a pipe gate with bollards so that pedestrian traffic can still walk the levee, but vehicle traffic can no longer access that area of the levee. Also at the base of the levee right behind Rotary Park is an issue because vehicles regularly drive up the face of the levee. We are budgeting to have guardrail put along the toe of that levee right there so that that can be prevented and the pipe gate can serve its purpose of preventing vehicle traffic.
I'm sorry. That's important because I can see some erosion of the levee and we don't want that with cars going up there.
So we have requested this to be in the budget. We have a few other items or projects in the queue, so this likely will not be done till August, September, but it is in the budget for this next year.
Thank you. Commissioner Rich?
Thank you. Where did you say that the, where you were gonna put the pedestrian access only? Was that First Street?
First Street. So the whole levee is pedestrian access.
Yeah.
But where the pipe gate is, pedestrians can still safely walk around the pipe
Right.
gate, but vehicles cannot.
Okay, so down, I know that there are some other places where vehicles can get up onto the road.
Yes.
If you block that off, how will they get off?
So vehicles will no longer be able to access that stretch of the levee because of the pipe gate and because of the guardrail. So they'll still be able to come down and up that First Street access, but the pipe gate will be to the west of the crest of the levee.
Okay. Right, thank you.
Yeah. Also, the lighting in the parks is still being addressed. Our city electrician has been prioritizing his work at the public safety facility. Once that is complete, he will be refocusing his efforts back in the parks. The cameras, Mr. Atterbury had received a proposal for security cameras in Sank Park for the perimeter of the home in the park so that it can be monitored there. And fencing, the RFP is being prepared for the fence at Sank Park so that that can be installed in the near future. And those were my items for the safety in the parks.
Very nice. Thank you. Thank you. I think there's been a lot of public expression for these things, and we are really grateful that you, staff and Wade and Mr. Legrone have stepped up and done it. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Madam Chairperson, we have one speaker on this item,
Thank you.
Stephanie Holstein.
Good Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Dawn, for clarifying the progress that we've been working on to reduce the amount of nuisance that's happening in that space of the levee, as well as the degradation to the integrity of the levee in that space and the environmental impact from vehicles misusing that space. I'd like to also bring attention, as Wade is working very hard to figure out how everything will look, and I know we've discussed this with Ron Belzer, and I know he's working with you guys on this. There's been a large increase of motorcycles driving back behind the tennis court as well. They drive at night without their lights on. So you hear them and they race back and forth. It's extremely dangerous. If any of them were to fall off, they could start a fire, that sort of thing. So I'm hoping in the system, and I know it's impossible to reduce every determinant person that has nothing better to do than to be a nuisance in this manner. But if there's some way in the division and the engineering of this barricade that addresses that space all the way behind the tennis courts to Bedrock Park, that would be greatly appreciated, because it is extremely dangerous and they're driving at high speeds. And again, they don't have any lights on at night when they're doing it. I don't know if anybody's aware of that, but I wanted to make sure you guys were aware of that's a very serious issue. I appreciate the intent to put the barricades also so people can't drive up and down. We have video of people in four-wheel roll bar type off-roading vehicles going up and down the levee. One of them hit a fence, almost went into the house next to the Chinese theater. So when I say nuisance, I mean the level of danger is very apparent, especially with Rotary Park being right there and pedestrians attempting to use that space, elderly people, children. So I really do appreciate you understanding the gravity of this situation and the safety that we're trying to bring to that space so people can use it and feel great about it and want to embrace it and love it and bring it back to a glory where it's not, it's just this constant left place where nobody cares about. So we'll keep our hearts open to it, and we really do appreciate everything you're doing for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie, for you and Brian as well, and the neighborhood watch efforts that you're doing. I think that really makes a difference in the community as well. And I know that working jointly with Wade and with staff and Oroville Police Department is really making a difference down there. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Madam Chairperson, that's the only speaker on this item.
Thank you.
Or for the rest of the items.
Okay, so moving on to commission reports. Wait, no, activity log, report log.
You'll see that in your packet, page 8 is the updated activity report log, and pretty much status quo on all the items. And the vandalism report has been presented. Website updates are being made. Many of them were provided to staff to be made. Thank you, Bill. And then you heard the presentation for Hewitt Park Phase 2. For the Adopt a Park program, we may have another potential Adopt a Park interest from a church in Thermalito to adopt Hammond Park. So we're working with them there.
Great.
Other than that, that's where we are with the activity report log, and then commission discussions.
Can I add just one thing to the director's report and things like that is, if you've been out to Hewitt Park lately, you'll see it's pretty unsightly in the back 40 there. The goats are scheduled to be in there within about a week, so we just haven't done a lot. We flow mowed it, a few times before Easter egg hunt and things like that, but the goats are scheduled to be in there. So if you see it unsightly, it's just because the goats, when they get done, it'll look like a pristine mowed down area. So they'll be in there. They're in the nature center currently. And just real quickly, P31 started last week, so you may see them in and out of our parks trimming city trees and stuff like that. So they are up and running.
Could you trim the big limb that's hanging over the Chinese monument over there? Behind the big Chinese tree limb fell on it.
What location?
Across from the Chinese temple.
Yes.
Yeah, we cut that and we chipped that today.
Oh,
So
good.
it's gone.
I need to
But
report.
it did rip and break, so we had to cut it off on Thursday afternoon.
Okay, great. I have to report back to my dad on that. Thank you. Are there any questions from the dais? And we don't have any from the public. Thank you for that. It's great information. Commission reports. I do the calling on that. Commissioner Krantz. Do you have a commission report? I do not. Mr. O'Reilly is not here. Commissioner Jones. Commissioner Rich.
I do not.
Believe it or not, neither does Kay Castro at this point. Boy, that was a great agenda and answered so many questions, so thank you very much. Any future agenda items? Oh, come on, we gotta have something. Okay, well, you might be hearing from us before that. So, let's bring up the Zoom thing very quickly.
I'll have our clerk explain that.
Just to explain that it is possible if we follow the rules?
So prior to COVID, I take that back. During COVID, rules were relaxed due to emergency orders that allowed us to meet via Zoom. About, I want to say 3 months ago now or so, the governor's orders expired. And when those governor orders expired, we reverted back to pre-COVID times. Prior to COVID, if you wanted to participate in a meeting via Zoom and you were part of a Brown Act regulated body, you had to publish the address in which you are attending the meeting at in the agenda. And since the agenda goes out 72 hours in advance, it means that you have to have that address to put in the agenda at that time. In addition, the address in which you publish in the agenda has to be doors unlocked, open, and accessible with an agenda posted 72 hours in advance in order to be able to attend from that location.
Okay, we'll do that if that's what we need to do. Are there any questions about that?
And so what that means for you guys, though, because the agenda has to be published at least 72 hours in advance, but for staff, I mean, we publish the agenda usually Thursday or Friday, which means that we would need to know by like that Monday where a commissioner would be attending from if they're going to be out of the area. But again, the hard one is, say, for instance, this is just a scenario that a commissioner is planning on flying out of town on Friday night or something, and they plan on attending from
Their car?
well, from a hotel room in Florida or something, say. You have to have that agenda posted on your hotel room door 72 hours in advance of the meeting. So if you haven't gotten to your hotel room yet, it makes it kind of hard.
Okay, but at least we have a process.
So there is a process. It is possible, but it's not. Sometimes it'll be easy. Sometimes it will not, to be able to follow that, which is why we've had some problems with individuals not being able to attend based on the state regulations.
I like that at least there's an option. So at 6:43, I adjourn the meeting. Oh, except Commissioner Krantz had a question, sorry.
I have one quick question about that. Does anyone besides staff see that address?
It's on the public agenda.
So for security reasons, does it matter to staff where someone might be participating from? In their car or in a public place like at a Starbucks or a McDonald's or something, so that you don't have to identify maybe where you are staying?
It doesn't matter to staff, but it's a state regulation that requires that the actual address that you're attending from be posted in the agenda 72 hours in advance, and it be open and accessible to the public. So for instance, if you wanted to say, if you were sitting at Bedrock Park in your car, then you would have to have an agenda posted on your car at Bedrock Park for 72 hours prior to the meeting, and your doors open during the meeting to sit in your car with you. I mean, I know I'm being literal, but like it
No, I get
really, typically it's someone's out of town, they're at a hotel, or someone's out of town at a family member's house. And so it's not quite to that extent, but that's the intent of it is that wherever a meeting is being held, that it be publicly accessible and open to the public.
And it's not often that there are agenda items so detrimental that your presence is absolutely required. If you're on vacation, enjoy your vacation.
Sure.
Exactly. And that's kind of, I think the intent too, is they make it a little cumbersome so that you really aren't doing it unless it's an absolute necessity.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? So now we're adjourning at